All right. Hi, everyone. It is the top of the hour, so we are going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. Today's webinar title is Opportunities for School Meals Procurement and Flexibilities During Supply Chain Disruptions. As always, thank you for joining us today and for all the work you are doing in your community to connect students to school and to out-of-school time meals. My name is Clarissa Hayes, and I'm a Senior Policy Analyst here at the Food Research and Action Center. And we are very excited today to welcome a group of representatives from USDA FNS on the webinar to talk through policy opportunities, waivers, and resources to help support operations in light of the current supply chain disruptions. We definitely know how busy they are and really appreciate them taking the time to join us today. So across the country, schools and community sponsors are dealing with supply chain disruptions at unprecedented levels, and this challenge is definitely far-reaching. According to a recent FNA survey, 97% of school food authorities were concerned about continued pandemic supply chain disruptions, with 65% of them citing this as a serious concern. And we know that the challenges are ranging in different communities. It can be from a shortage of truck drivers that in turn is limiting the frequency and number of deliveries to schools, product shortages and discontinued items, price increases, staffing shortages, and more. And we have been excited to see that schools and other partners are using really innovative methods to overcome these challenges. And the goal of today's webinar is to really provide a grounding on some of the policy and waiver opportunities that can help support these ongoing efforts. So we are going to go ahead and get started. We may have time at the end for questions. So if you have any questions as we go along for the USDA FNS staff, please feel free to use the Q&A function on your screen. To find the Q&A, you should look at your toolbar on your screen, and there should be a section that says More with 3 dots. If you click on that, you will see a drop-down opportunity to ask a question. We will not be taking questions through the chat box, so please make sure if you have a question, you are using that Q&A function through the WebEx software. If we don't get to your questions today, we will definitely make sure that they are addressed in the follow-up materials, which will include the recording of today's event. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to let the speakers fully introduce themselves when they present, but here is a snapshot of who will be sharing with us today. Again, wanted to thank USDA for their partnership and for being here to share with all of us. So from the USDA FNS team, we have Jessica Saracino, Sarah Smith-Holmes, Andrea Farmer, Tim Vasquez, and Sheldon Gordon, who will be sharing more information and resources. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sarah Smith-Holmes to get us started.
So thanks so much, Clarissa, and good afternoon, everyone. I am Sarah Smith-Holmes. I am the Director of the Program Monitoring and Operational Support Division in the Child Nutrition Programs at USDA Food and Nutrition Service. And as Clarissa said, the school districts and sponsors nationwide are experiencing the challenges with obtaining the foods and supplies needed to serve the meals because of the disruption along the school food service supply chain. Product shortages, the discontinued item, food distributors cancellation, delays and canceled deliveries with little or no notice whatsoever. This has become a huge challenge in the school nutrition programs, and we know that you're facing some real issues. Additionally, shortages of school nutrition professionals, valued staff, these continued conditions are creating the barriers to our programs. And so USDA is committed to ensuring that schools have the resources and flexibilities that they need to serve safely the school meals and the healthy meals to support students' learning and development. Today, we wanted to highlight school meal procurement strategies, some program flexibilities, waivers, training, resources, and best practice strategies that may be available to districts as they navigate the remainder of the school year ahead. And currently, our nationwide waiver authority goes through June 2022. So it's only for this school year currently. So let's moving on. The first thing I get to talk about is one of everyone's favorite topics, money. And first of all, throughout the pandemic, school food professionals have met an extraordinary challenge to ensure every child can get the food they need to learn, grow, and thrive. The circumstances in local communities have remained unpredictable, and supply chain for food and labor have been stressed and at times disrupted, as we just talked about. USDA is now providing up to $1.5 billion to help schools respond to supply chain disruption. USDA Food and Nutrition Service will be providing states up to $1 billion to enhance local school districts the ability for purchasing foods for school meals and serve and enhance local flexible spending by providing schools and school districts directly with resources needed to address the supply chain challenges. In addition, a portion of these resources will be used for purchasing of USDA foods by the Agricultural Marketing Services, AMS, to schools to partially mitigate supply chain issues that they may be encountering in their commercial purchases. And finally, SFAs could be experiencing increased costs as they adapt to the unexpected disruptions. The increased reimbursement rates that FNS is providing for school food authorities participating in the SSO waiver for school year 2021-22 may be helpful in defraying these additional costs. The increased rates are 15% higher than a free National School Lunch Program lunch and 11% higher than a free severe need breakfast. Additionally, the summer food service rates are adjusted annually for inflation. So in January, SFAs can expect an increase to their reimbursement rate. Now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Jess to talk about procurement. Jess?
Hi everyone, I'm happy to be here with you. My name is Jess Saraceno. I am the branch chief of the program monitoring, schools program monitoring branch in child nutrition at FNS. And as Sarah mentioned, we have heard that local operators are experiencing issues with food service contracts, including cancellations for a variety of reasons, including increased product prices, distributors discontinuing services, and labor supply shortages. Manufacturers have issued notices that popular products are no longer available, or maybe are not available throughout the school year. Distributors have canceled contracts in small school districts that do not purchase in sufficient quantities. And SFAs have also cited that specific product distributors and vendors such as milk, chicken, beef, and pizza are not available due to labor shortages and rising costs. We also have heard that some SFAs are having trouble procuring equipment and equipment parts as part of these supply chain disruptions. So I'm going to talk through some procurement options that you all potentially could use if you're experiencing supply chain disruptions. One option is the non-competitive procurement method. This is found in 2 CFR 200-320C, which is part of the federal procurement standards that the Office of Management and Budget creates. And this regulation allows for non-competitive procurement during emergency circumstances. The circumstances that we have discussed around supply chain would be considered an emergency, and local operators may utilize this procurement method if they are experiencing supply chain disruption. So this includes food, but also we got a question around equipment. So equipment would certainly fall into this bucket as well. Emergency non-competitive procurement allows local operators to quickly replace unexpected contract gaps with alternative sources or products. And there are a couple things I want to emphasize with this. The first, because there has been some confusion about this emergency non-competitive procurement, but this is something that's available to you all without a waiver. You do not need to request a waiver from your state agency to utilize non-competitive emergency procurement, nor do you need their approval to do so. So if you are experiencing some sort of supply chain disruption and you need to get a product, you can use the non-competitive procurement method to do so. It's also important to emphasize here that this is a federal procurement of something that's available federally. So you all do need to check with your state and locals to see if there are some restrictions around the use of this emergency procurement. Well, local operators do not need approval from their state agencies to utilize non-competitive procurement method during an emergency. They do need to maintain documentation to support its use. Local operators should retain documentation for the basis of using this procurement method, information such as data and documents that quantify specific conditions and emergency circumstances that prompted the decision to use this procurement method. And on the slide here, we have some examples, but it could simply be an email showing that there was a cancellation of some sort of contract that you had and that you needed to go out and non-competitively procure that product because you needed it, in a short amount of time. It doesn't need to be, some sort of long, lengthy explanation. We did recently, well, not that recently, October 15th, we did release some questions and answers around emergency procurement. So if you do have additional questions around its use, you can visit our website. I have the address here, and take a look and see if we're hopefully able to answer your questions around emergency procurement. I also wanted to talk about some other ideas around what you could do if you're experiencing supply chain disruptions. We do encourage local operators to share with each other and states to share with each other the efforts that they're making around supply chain disruptions. And here are just some ideas that we have heard that we're going to share with you all. Local operators might want to consider purchasing smaller quantities through multiple local operators or small businesses, such as alternatives to products that they generally purchase in a single large transaction. Leveraging local foods may help to form new connections with local small businesses and producers entering into the school nutrition market. Your state Department of Agriculture or Extension Service marketing division may be able to host some sort of buyer-grower matching tool. You could also reach out to your state's farm-to-school coordinator who may be able to connect you with local producers. Other options to address supply chain challenges may include purchasing cooperatively, especially among small schools, or those in rural areas that can attract distributors, Consolidating purchases may mean less variety of products. However, these products may be used in a variety of ways. One example is serving the same chicken nugget in a hot meal or on a salad or a la carte. So just being a little bit creative about how you use the products that you're able to get. Another topic that has come up is the micro purchase threshold. And we have received we've received a few requests for us to raise that threshold. And unfortunately, FNS is not able to waive the micro purchase threshold. That is set at the federal standard set by the by OMB. But we did recently put out a memo that highlights changes that OMB made to the micro purchase threshold back in November of 2020. And just so you all are aware that threshold has been increased. The memo highlights that for low risk auditees, so if you're you can self-certify that you are at low risk, that threshold can go up to $50,000, which is a huge increase than what it was previously. So that web memo is also available on our website, and you can take a look at that as well. But just wanted to unfortunately, we can't raise that threshold, but it has recently been increased. That may be helpful for you all if you are experiencing supply chain disruptions. Now I'd like to talk about a couple of flexibilities FNS has provided. And just as a disclaimer, these are just for schools. The previous federal procurement standards would apply across all programs, but these nationwide waivers are just for schools. And the first is the length of food service management company contracts. That is set in FNS regulations, so it is something that FNS is able to waive, and we have waived that. Currently in regulations, the duration for a food service management company is set at 5 years. we have waived that, and it's waived through June 30th of 2022. So this does provide some reprieve for folks who are trying to are not wanting to go through the procurement process. As Sarah mentioned, and unfortunately, we're not able to extend this past June of 2022 right now. Congress would need to give us that authority beyond there. But this does mean that potentially SFAs can use this to not have to go out for another bid for their food service management company contract. And then another waiver we have out there is that schools have expressed concern about potentially losing federal reimbursement if they're not able to complete a meal because of supply chain disruption. So they're not able to meet the meal pattern. So to help alleviate these concerns, we have provided a nationwide waiver to all states, which eliminates the requirements for states to withhold reimbursement when a school is unable to meet the meal pattern due to a supply chain disruption. So you don't need to worry about any sort of fiscal action if you're not able to meet the meal pattern because the food didn't show up. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea Farmer, who's going to talk about some flexibilities specific to CACFP.
All right, thank you, Jess, and hello, everyone. So I'm Andrea Farmer. I'm the branch chief of the Community Meals Program Monitoring Branch, and we handle CACFP and SFSP, the Summer Food Service Program. So for those of you who are operating programs under CACFP, we recognize that these various supply chain disruptions are also impacting the CACFP community. We understand that CACFP operators are facing food product shortages and increased food and supply prices, and they need to have the ability to maximize the available support and flexibility when monitoring CACFP meal pattern compliance. So on October 28th, FNS published Child and Adult Care Food Program Flexibilities during COVID-19 Supply Chain Disruptions. And this memorandum outlines the existing flexibilities available to all CACFP operators experiencing supply chain disruptions related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And it encourages state agency and CACFP sponsoring organization discretion when monitoring for compliance with meal pattern requirements. In these situations, we encourage state agencies and CACFP operators to use flexibilities already in place, including the regulatory flexibility allowing state agencies to approve CACFP meal service without fluid milk during a temporary emergency period, as well as flexibilities in the nationwide waiver allowing specific meal pattern flexibility in CACFP for school year 2021 for states that elect to use it. We also strongly encourage state agencies and sponsoring organizations to prioritize training and technical assistance in lieu of fiscal action or serious deficiency determinations when they observe noncompliance related to meal pattern requirements due to COVID-19 supply chain disruptions. Under these circumstances, state agencies and sponsoring organizations should work with CACFP operators who are not meeting these meal pattern requirements to identify solutions on a case-by-case basis. To help CACFP operators that are facing various supply chain disruptions resulting in the cancellation of food deliveries, food product shortages, and increased food and supply prices, we are currently working on publishing a fact sheet with suggestions for working around these challenges. And I'm going to say that we are hoping that we will be able to get that out soon. Hopefully I'm not jinxing it, but that is what our hope is right now. CACFP operators who typically buy food from vendors should communicate with food distributors on a regular basis to identify any emerging supply chain issues, place product orders earlier, and forecast food needs for a longer period. And they may need to identify alternate sources of supply, such as grocery stores. We recommend that CACFP operators make their best efforts to plan ahead and ask store staff when they expect to receive deliveries and restock certain items. So for example, when making a shopping list, include a list of appropriate substitutions in the event that the store does not have what you need. If your program is using recipes, look for ones with ingredients that are easy to substitute. Please note that when swapping ingredients, you should assess how the change could impact the recipe yield, crediting information, and meal pattern contributions to ensure the recipe will still align with your menu planning goals. When a planned food item or recipe ingredient is not available, program operators are encouraged to consider substitutions within the same meal component. And the Food Buying Guide for Child Nutrition Programs, which is pictured here with a link, is a useful tool for determining how foods may contribute towards the meal pattern requirements. And now I'm going to turn it over to Tim.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tim Vasquez, and I'm the lead program analyst for the school programs branch in the child nutrition programs here at the Food and Nutrition Service. I'm so happy to be here with you today. I will start with a discussion on, that's the right slide, to help CACFP operators that are facing, wait a minute, sorry about that. We understand that child nutrition program operators are using targeted meal pattern flexibilities this year. For example, operators may continue to use prepackaged grab-and-go meals to maintain a safe meal service, or may need flexibility to manage supply chain challenges. In response, earlier this year, we issued 2 meal pattern waivers for school year 2021-2022. I'll start by going over the school meal pattern waiver, which also applies to the NSLP seamless summer option. The nationwide meal pattern waiver allows school food authorities to request flexibility for the following meal requirements: that meals meet the dietary specifications for sodium, that all grains offered be whole grain rich, that for preschool attendees, at least 1 serving per day across all eating occasions must be whole grain rich, to offer a variety of vegetables from the vegetable subgroups, to offer a variety of at least 2 different options of fluid milk, that low-fat milk must be unflavored, and to plan menus and offer food components tailored for the K through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12 age grade groups. To participate under any of the meal pattern flexibilities, schools must contact the state agency for approval. With the exception of sodium, state agencies must consider approval of operators' requests for these flexibilities on a case-by-case basis. For sodium, state agencies should provide flexibility regardless of the reason given. We recognize a lot has changed in a short period of time, specifically in regards to supply chain concerns, and although nutrition is a priority, we also understand increased flexibilities are necessary. We strongly encourage states to grant flexibilities as needed and for a reasonable time period. While states have discretion about the meal pattern waiver request process, we expect it will be a fair process that provides an appropriate amount of flexibility to meet the evolving needs of the schools. We encourage state agencies to use a process that minimizes burden for schools and for the state agency staff. Please also note that Congress has provided flexibility for schools to offer low-fat flavored milk in the National School Lunch Program, School Breakfast Program, and the National School Lunch Program Seamless Summer Option. This flexibility is currently effective through December 3rd, 2021. FNS will notify states and program operators of any congressional action impacting this flexibility beyond tomorrow. If the congressional flexibility is not further extended, schools will need to contact their state agency to request a waiver in order to serve low-fat flavored milk. Operational or procurement constraints affecting a school's ability to change practice during the school year could be a reason to request a waiver. As noted on the slide, the targeted school meal pattern flexibility waiver is available for this entire school year up until June 30th, 2022. Next slide, please. We also issued a targeted CACFP meal pattern waiver. This waiver can also be used to address supply chain challenges. Under this waiver, CACFP operators may request targeted meal pattern flexibility for any or all of the following three aspects of the meal pattern requirements. 1, that at least 1 serving of grains per day must be whole grain rich. 2, that the crediting of grains by ounce equivalents must be fully implemented by this past October. And so the third, that low-fat milk must be unflavored. The ounce equivalence flexibility means that if implementing the use of ounce equivalents for grains is not achievable due to the pandemic, CACFP operators may request to use this targeted meal pattern flexibility to waive this requirement during the pandemic. As with the school meal pattern waiver, CACFP operators must request use of this waiver, and state agencies must consider approval of operator requests on a case-by-case basis. And again, we're encouraging our state agencies to use a fair process that minimizes burden and provides an appropriate amount of flexibility. Next slide, please. To be clear, both of the meal pattern waivers give state agencies authority to allow meal pattern flexibility based on supply chain disruptions caused by COVID-19. Schools do not need extensive information or highly formal documentation regarding a supply chain disruption in order to request a waiver. We are encouraging states to be flexible and accept the information and justification that schools do have available in order to approve the waiver. Once a supply chain disruption is established, the state agency may grant the necessary meal pattern flexibilities for a reasonable amount of time. We understand that child nutrition operators continue to face challenges and uncertainties and are encouraging states to provide schools with appropriate flexibility so that they can continue to safely provide nutritious meals to kids during this very unique school year. If operators anticipate challenges ahead, we encourage them to contact their state agency to proactively begin the waiver request process. Please note, state agencies cannot approve flexibility requests for meal pattern requirements that are not covered in both of the nationwide waivers we just discussed. Next slide, please. I'd also like to highlight specific flexibilities related to fluid milk requirements in the school and childcare programs. Under program regulations, if emergency conditions temporarily prevent a school that normally has a supply of fluid milk from obtaining a milk delivery, the state agency may also allow the school to serve meals during the emergency period with an alternate form of fluid milk or without fluid milk. Similarly, for the child and adult care food program, childcare institutions and facilities experiencing difficulties obtaining milk deliveries due to temporary emergency conditions may serve meals without milk with state agency approval. Supply chain disruptions caused by COVID-19 would be considered a temporary emergency condition for purposes of this flexibility. Once a program operator has established a supply chain issue and a need for this milk flexibility, we encourage state agencies to provide the flexibility for a reasonable amount of time. This is a permanent flexibility grounded in regulations and therefore always available during emergency conditions. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to highlight some of the other waivers available this current school year. For the sake of time, I won't discuss everything, just some of the high points. This school year, 2021-2022, schools continue to have the option to serve all students free meals through the National School Lunch Program Seamless Summer option. By not collecting money for meals or tracking individual student eligibility, schools participating in the NSLP Seamless Summer option have maximum flexibility to serve meals in a way that prioritizes health and safety. Further, we have increased the meal reimbursement rates for schools participating in the NSLP Seamless Summer option this school year, recognizing the increased costs of providing safe meals during the pandemic. We understand this additional funding does not address all of the cost concerns school districts are facing, but we hope this will lessen the burden some. The increased reimbursement rate is available for the entire school year, 2021-2022. We have also provided schools with operational flexibilities. In school year 2021-2022, schools may continue with non-congregate meal service, mealtime flexibility, and parent-guardian pickup as needed. While we don't necessarily expect schools and childcare operators to use the non-congregate feeding, mealtime, and parent-guardian pickup waivers for the entire school year, rest assured they are available in cases where they are needed to ensure children's access to healthy meals. For example, as students have been able to safely return to the school cafeteria for meal service, most schools should no longer need the non-congregate meal service waiver. However, if a school unexpectedly needs to transition to virtual or hybrid learning for a period of time, the school could use the non-congregate feeding waiver to facilitate grab-and-go meals during that time. These flexibilities have been essential to providing grab-and-go meals throughout the pandemic, and we know that some schools may need to continue socially distant meal service models in the coming months. In addition, we recently released a suite of 5 waivers for summer food service program requirements for serving meals during unanticipated school closures. For example, when an entire school must close for a short period due to COVID-19 and virtual learning is not available, these waivers allow meal service at school sites and extend meal service flexibilities to the summer food service program during an unanticipated school closure. We hope these waivers will help schools ensure children continue to have access to nutritious meals no matter what the current school year brings with it. And with that, I would like to turn it over to my colleague and friend, Sheldon Gordon.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sheldon Gordon. I'm currently serving as the Acting Director for the Nutrition, Education, Training, and Technical Assistance Division within Child Nutrition Programs. In my permanent role, I'm the Branch Chief for Nutrition and Technical Assistance Branch. So today I'm going to be sharing just a few resources developed by FNS Team Nutrition and the Institute of Child Nutrition that may be helpful to you. Next slide. So FNS Team Nutrition Initiative has created several resources to help state agencies, schools, and others to adjust to their meal service operations and respond to the procurement and supply chain challenges during this dynamic school year. You can find these materials on the Planning for a Dynamic School Environment webpage, which can be found at the web address listed on the bottom right corner of the slide. You can also use your phone or tablet's camera to scan the QR code next to the web address. Once you scan this code, it should automatically open on your device, or you may need to click on the QR code that's highlighted on your mobile screen to open it. Materials include our 4 new tip sheets. One tip sheet provides a summary of available waivers and flexibilities for school year 21-22 and shows how schools can use these options to help with menu planning and menu service. Another tip sheet provides this information in an easy-to-read table. There's a third tip sheet that provides an in-depth examples and scenarios of how schools could apply these waivers throughout the school year, and the fourth tip sheet details procurement and menu planning strategies when faced with supply chain issues. FNS has also hosted webinars on these topics as well, and those webinar recordings can also be found on this page. FNS has recently released customizable letters that schools can send to families to inform them of menu changes due to procurement challenges, as well as school meals grab-and-go newsletters that highlight resources for making last-minute substitutions to your school meal menu and tips for schools that wish to encourage students to supplement their meals from home with school lunch. Next slide. FNS has also created web pages to help state agencies, school food authorities, and others adjust their meal service operations in response to procurement challenges. You can find this information that shows how schools can use the waivers and flexibilities to help with menu planning and meal service this school year. This web page is also available on this, the web address on this page, and you can again use your phone or your tablet to scan the QR code. Next. If SFAs and state agencies have developed their own resources that address supply chain issues and other procurement challenges, they are invited to share these resources with the Child Nutrition Programs operators through ICN's Child Nutrition Sharing site. Visit the Child Nutrition Sharing site at the link, and you'll see here on the screen. Also, I will provide that in the chat box for you. State agencies are invited to share their state-developed resources and materials, such as sample letters, templates, and tools, with other state agencies through ICN sharing site. The sharing site aids in the collection of sharing of state and local resources by providing a centralized place to store, organize, manage, and share knowledge, tools, and resources with their peers. Child nutrition program resources on the sharing site are organized by topics such as menu planning, COVID-19, financial management, and farm to school. If state agencies prefer to share their supply chain communication resources privately with other state agencies, the Institute also offers a state agency-only sharing site at the web address on the bottom of this slide. This private site requires a username and password, so if you wish to have access to the CNSS State Agency Resource Sharing Site, please contact your respective state agency to request access. State agency resources that are submitted to the Institute State Agency-only sharing site can only be viewed by other state agencies. These resources are not available to the public. Thank you, and I will turn it back over to Sarah.
Thanks so much, Sheldon, and to all of our presenters today. You know, whenever we have a chance to have an audience like you, we do want to take a minute to remind folks about the COVID-19 vaccine. All kids 5 and older are now eligible to get vaccinated. So we always like to remind folks that that's out there for the kids, and just remember that the long-term effects of pediatric COVID cases can be serious, and the best way to prevent it is with the vaccine. And now just going on, I want to say thank you. FNS will continue to closely monitor this situation and emphasize to states and school districts the available flexibilities, the waivers, and other tools to deal with disruption of normal food procurement channels. We will continue to dialogue with you, with the state and stakeholder groups on the nature and extent of supply chain and potential solution, including our friends here at FRAC, the School Nutrition Association, the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and the American Commodity Distribution Association. I do hope that you have enjoyed this webinar, and we will continue to stay in touch and make sure that we continue to hear what the situation is there on the ground, and hope that we have been able to help you answer some of the questions you've had today. Thank you so much to everyone today. Please remember, if you have any additional questions, to reach out to your state agency for any assistance. Thank you, guys.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah, and the rest of the USDA team for that really comprehensive overview, and for all of your leadership during this time of supply chain disruptions as the pandemic continues. We really appreciate it. I know that the resources that you have created, I oftentimes go back to them and share them out and find them very useful. So thank you for covering that. For everyone on the webinar, I think we got to everyone's questions, so we'll go ahead and wrap up a little bit early. I'm sure everyone appreciates some time back in your day. We hope this was a helpful either introduction to some of the flexibilities or a refresher on the different options that are that exist right now to help support your operations. But like Sarah mentioned, we will definitely keep everybody updated through our channels as well. We'll send out the recording of this webinar, and we're really excited about the funding opportunity that Sarah mentioned earlier on in the webinar. So we'll make sure to keep everybody in the loop about that, as well as advocacy efforts around the waiver extensions and making sure that those flexibilities are in place as long as they are needed. So I just want to thank Jessica, Andrea, Tim, Sarah, and Sheldon for taking time out of your day to join us and share such great and insightful information. Again, we really appreciate it. And to everybody else who tuned in, we hope this was a helpful event, and we look forward to having you join us next time. So thanks all, and have a great rest of your day.